Now, I told you that Johnny loved driving the ox cart. And it's true. And he did it for years. And I told you that his ruts crisscrossed the prairies. And it's true. And some of them got so deep they became creeks. And he would tell you that some of them became rivers, but I'm not sure I believe that one. And one time, he was in Lloydminster, and he was just sitting down having a bite to eat when two well-dressed gentlemen come, and they introduce themselves, and they say that they're from the railroad. And they're looking to build railroad tracks from Lloydminster to Edmonton. And they're looking for somebody who knows the prairies really well, someone to show them the best path. And of course, everywhere they asked, they said, oh, Johnny's your man. So Johnny's feeling pretty good about himself, but he's also feeling a little bit angry because the railroads have been putting the ox carts out of business. And he doesn't really want them to build that railroad track. So he talks to him a little bit, doesn't give him any information. And then he excuses himself and goes back and finishes filling his cart. Because you see, he was set to go to Edmonton the next morning. Well, the next morning comes, it's bright and early, before the sun even comes up. He leaves town because he doesn't want to be bothered by the railroad people. And he's driving along, and about an hour in, the sun's starting to come up, and the birds are singing, and the farmers are starting to come out and work in their fields, and it's just beautiful, and he's loving life. But he hears this kind of sound behind him, this distant pound, pound, clang, clang, pound, pound, clang, clang. But he figures, somebody's built a barn or something, working on something, it's no big deal, right? So he's driving for a little while longer, but it seems to be following him. In fact, it seems to be getting a little bit louder. It's pound, pound, clang, clang. Pound, pound, clang, clang. Until it's right behind him, it's pound, pound, clang, clang. And he takes a look behind him, and there's the railroad people laying tracks in his ruts. So he snaps the reins on his oxen and yells at them and gets them running a little bit faster. Oxen, not very fast, and they're hauling a heavy load, but he's going. But that sound is right behind him. The pound, pound, clang, clang, pound, pound, clang, clang, pound, pound, clang, clang. Then all of a sudden, pound, pound, clang, clang. It's in front of him. All of a sudden, he's on the railroad track. They're building tracks in front of him. But before he can do anything about it, he hears a different sound. This chugga chugga, woo woo! So he turns around behind him and he sees a train coming. So again, his eyes go from like this to this. He jumps up and he snaps the reins and he's yelling at his oxen, calling them all sorts of names, trying to get them to run as fast as they possibly can. And they are running as fast as possibly can. But as that turns out, it's just a little bit slower than a train. So the train comes up and just gently wedges itself underneath the ox cart and pushes that closer and closer until it scoops up the oxen and they land on the front seat other side of Johnny. Well, you should have seen the sight in Edmonton when they arrived, because, it's a big deal. First train on this track coming in, everybody's out to see it. And they see the train coming in and they see, what is that? They see Johnny stuck in between two oxen who had never been happier because they got to ride instead of pull for a change. And Johnny had never made this trip any quicker, but, all of it being pushed in the front of the train. And unfortunately, I can't tell you that this story has a really happy ending because the railway does eventually put Johnny out of business and he has to go into doing other things. And other things he does. So he goes on and he does all sorts of different things. He moves all over the prairies. And at one point he moves to Edmonton. And this happens to be the same time that the Red River Rebellion is happening in Manitoba. And I expected to have to explain that to you as well, but we can skip that as well. So everybody in the prairies is all, they're all panicky and really on edge, and they're worried about being attacked. And that includes the people of Edmonton. They're really on edge, and there's rumors everywhere that there's being attacks and kidnappings and just invasions and war parties being sighted all over the place. Everybody had a story, not that happened to them, or even to somebody who happened to them, but everybody had a story that something happened to somebody they knew, somebody knew. So they're really worried, and they started carrying guns everywhere. And they stopped when their laundry outside, and they stopped letting the kids play outside, and they started boarding up all the windows. And they started rebuilding the fort and fixing it up. And while they were doing that, they found this big brass cannon. And they thought, if anybody attacks us and we fire this thing, they're running for the hills. This is awesome. The problem was, this thing hadn't been fired for like 50 years, so nobody knew how to load it. So they're frantically looking all over Edmonton, particularly for old people who might know how to load this cannon. To no avail. But At the same time, there's this rumor that started that there was a big war camp just outside of Edmonton, and that they could attack it at any time. So the people searching for people to load the cannon, well, they were frantic, and they were all over the place. And they came into a saloon that Johnny happened to be in. You know, he was sitting down eating and possibly having a little too much to drink. And when they asked, does anybody in here know anything about cannons? Johnny jumps up with both arms and he says, I do, I do, I do! And then he explains to them very excitedly that he had this friend who was a sailor who explained to him all about cannons, and that they built cannons and they fired them and it was awesome and he knew everything. It was great. Pick him. So these people were really excited because they finally found somebody who said they knew anything about cannons. So they said, no, come down the next morning. The invasion can happen anytime. Just come down the next morning. You can load the cannon. It'll be fantastic. Thank you. So the next morning, Johnny's coming down. He's got a bit of a headache and he's shaking his head too because he doesn't know why he said what he did. Because the truth is, Johnny never fired a cannon. He never built a cannon. He did have a friend who was a sailor. And he did tell him something about cannons, but he doesn't remember. All he can really remember is the number 5. Now, was it 5 pounds a shot? Was it 5 inches of fuse? Was it 5 pounds of black powder? He didn't know. So he sat there and he tried to work it out for a little bit, but to no avail. So he decided he'd just put 5-inch fuse, 5 pounds of black powder, 5 pounds of shot into this thing. And he told him, it's good to go. It's ready to be fired. Well, they were really excited, but at the same time, Johnny's setting up the cannon. The RCMP are going out to where this war camp is supposed to be. And they get out there, and, well, there's no sign that there's no sign of a teepee or a tent or people or horses or dogs or fire or anything. There's no sign that anything had ever been in this field. So the invasion doesn't come. And the people of Edmonton slowly relax a little bit. They stop taking their guns to get groceries. They start putting their laundry out again. They take their boards off their windows and they start letting the kids run around. And the people in the fort, they realize, we have a loaded cannon out front, and that's kind of dangerous. So they have 2 choices, they figure, right? They could disarm it, or they could fire it. And what would you do, honestly? Right? So they advertise it all over town. And, it's just a big deal. And thousands of people come down and they line up on either side. And they got this cannon, it's lined up and aimed at the far bank of the river. And there's a nice clear path all the way back to the fort. And out of the fort walks the mayor. And followed by him, the chief RCMP officer. And followed behind him is Johnny. And the mayor gives this big speech about how great Edmonton is and how friendly they are with the natives and all this kind of stuff. And then the RCMP officer gives an even longer speech about how great the RCMP is and the natives and Edmonton, and of course, and how this cannon firing symbolizes the peace between them. Right? Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But then it's Johnny's turn. So he just lights a match and lights the fuse. And everybody covers their ears and waits. And the fuse goes down and down. Down, and down, and waits, and waits, and BAM! The shot goes flying out of the cannon, misses the other side of the river completely, flies up in the atmosphere, and as far as anybody knows, it's still orbiting the Earth. The shockwave from the blast flattens all the grass around it and knocks the entire crowd on their back. And when they get up, and they take a look, the cannon's missing. And they think, oh my goodness, we blew up a cannon. And then they start thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, we blew up a cannon. But then somebody gasps and points. And like it happens in crowds, everybody's eyes follow that one person who's pointing. And 300 or 400 feet back from where it originally was sitting, the cannon has embedded itself in the fort wall. Well, the people of Edmonton try to make things up to the natives eventually. And Johnny does try to make it up to the people of Edmonton. Unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you. Well, I do have time to tell you, but apparently I'm a little bit quicker than I thought. So, in closing, if you enjoyed my stories, I do have a CD coming. I didn't have time to get it prepared for this. I do have a little table out front there with a little sign-up sheet. If you want to be notified of the CD, just give me your email address, phone number, whatever. I'll let you know when it's ready. You can also come down to the farmers market occasionally. I'll be down there selling there. You can check my website, rickmills.ca. You'll be able to purchase that as well as my books. You can see more storytelling. I have fairy tales, fables, various stories you can share with children or yourselves or whatever you want, as well as art and games, and everything that I'm doing is on my website. I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember. Outside I also have unrelated books and board games that I've made, as well as, if you guys have a story, particularly since you guys are a little bit of an older audience, I bet you have some great stories, and I'd love to hear them. If I'll be outside, you can come tell me out there, or if you don't feel comfortable telling me, you can go pick my card up and write me an email, or go to my website and send it to me through there. I would absolutely love to hear stories, and it doesn't have to be, like an Old West story, but something that somebody told you once, or something that happened to you, or something that happened to a friend of yours, or something that happened to a friend of yours. It doesn't matter. You can just make it up on the spot. I'd love to hear great stories. So, with that, I give you back to our lovely host, Don Cartwright, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.